What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Kristen Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, the show that seeks to explore and clarify the complexities of human consciousness. I'm your host, Kristen Leigh Griffiths. Today, I have the honor of sitting with someone whose life work is both sacred and essential, Paige Deponte, founder and executive of the Spirit Horse Ranch on the island of Maui. Paige is no stranger to grief, resilience, and rebirth, a survivor of complex trauma and a global traveler who always found her peace on Maui. Paige has dedicated her life to creating a haven for healing. After the loss of her husband in 2011, it was her horses who reawakened her purpose, their sentience and presence guiding her back to herself. In 2021, she founded the Spirit Horse Ranch, a trauma-informed, equine-assisted healing center that offers space for both children and adults to reclaim their stories and rebuild their spirits. With a long list of certifications and a deep intuitive connection to the work, Paige brings a rare blend of professional training and a very soulful wisdom to every interaction. She's a mother, a grandmother, a healer, and a guardian of the land of people of Maui, especially now, in the wake of the devastating fires that changed the island forever. Let this episode be a window into Paige's world, one of horses, healing, and the heart-led service. And as we honor May, Mental Health Awareness Month, I invite you to join us in supporting the Spirit Horse Ranch with a donation. You'll find the link in the show notes. Now, I'd like to welcome my guest to the show, Paige. Thank you so much for being here.
Aloha, Kristen. Thank you so much for this beautiful first beginning week of May, celebrating mental health and inviting me to discuss mental wellness. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. And I love saying aloha whenever I get the opportunity to. I'm on the East Coast and it doesn't make much sense for me to say it, but it's always a pleasure when I get to. So thanks for that reminder. Wow. I would love to hear your story. Do you mind sharing it with us? Can you take us back to the beginning and what was the spark that led you to found the Spirit Horse Ranch?
Sure. So when my husband passed away, I took over the family ranch. I had been a global traveler. I was in fashion for a long time, and then I went into documentary filmmaking around the world. Exciting and just very deeply moving by the different cultures I was able to encounter. So in 2011, when my husband passed away, I had to step away from that, come home, and take care of and build up the businesses, which are wonderful. I love them. But on a spiritual level, it was work. And so the way that we set up our business was trail rides to check the cattle. And I felt that the horses were not being handled the way I wanted them handled. I felt that they were family and that we needed to find a different way to work with them. So over a long period of time, working in the trail ride business and the connection to the horses on a totally different level than power, domination, and control, our tours became quite successful because we really related to the connection to the horse, to the land, and helping people feel really good when they got off the horses. COVID happened in 2000 and, what year was it? My brain just... 2020. It seems like a long time ago. So in 2020, everything shut down. Our businesses all shut down and everybody was sent inside. Well, I was out at the ranch and there was nobody out here. I was predominantly out here 100% of the time by myself, surrounded by my horses. And I've done all the things and all the healings for my complex trauma. And some of it's pretty severe. There's a lot of abuse, physical, sexual abuse in my history. And so, I did work very hard to heal and to rebuild myself in my life and find peace. But during 2020, I was sitting with my horses every day. And they would make sort of an arc around me in this one area where I would sit with them in the mornings. And I swear they were like, tell her about therapy. I'm telling you, it sounds crazy. But I was sitting there on a rock one day, just talking to my horses, and this feeling of true peace, which, with all the things that I've done, I had never really encountered my nervous system finding this sense of peace. And they had their heads kind of like all pointed at me, and this vision of, how could I help others feel this way? Because there are parts of a person that feel unhealable, right? Certain things that happen to an individual that can feel unhealable. You just learn to live with it. This was my story. I'm creating new chapters. We know all the mental health things. But working with the horses and just sitting with them every day, constantly, because they were the only people I could talk to. I was in isolation, right, for 30 days. So me and my dog and my horses would spend, at least a good hour in the morning, a good hour in the afternoon. And this transformation started happening. And I'm like, what is this? What is happening to me? Like, I feel so happy and I feel, really joyful and at peace. So I started investigating, when I first took over the ranch, I thought maybe I'm clean and sober, maybe an addiction program rather than trail rides. And it was kind of poo-pawed by the powers that be. So here we are, 2020, facing all these mental health crises, especially for our youth. And I started feeling really good, like, what COVID? I feel great. Life is wonderful. So I started putting the dots together and kind of aligning what could we do with the horses to create the same feeling that I'm getting, because I thought there were parts of me that were never going to feel joy, right? Even though I've healed and done all the things. So I started researching trauma-informed care, and there weren't a lot of options. And finally came across Natural Lifemanship, which is trauma-informed care equine-assisted services. And I started researching, because I had spent a long time researching specifically something that I wanted, which was, how do I truly heal this part of me that goes way back to being a baby? They had a system. It's all about rebuilding relationship. So relationship to self and others. And it starts with the attachment and detachment disorder, which happens more frequently than we could imagine, especially since the family unit is really discombobulated these days. Parents both work. It's not anybody's fault, right? It's just, that's the way our society is at this point. Children are put into daycare or babysitters. So the nurturing attachment that we would normally receive is gone. So the first thing that happens is we no longer have that safe sense of well-being. And then oftentimes, even by 3, 4, or 5, those formative years, that nurturing is not given to us. So then we're thrown into the world, we go to school, and then there's all these things happening. So if you have an attachment or detachment disorder of any kind or trauma during those first few years, you're not really going to be in your body. And so as trauma happens, we have a first trauma, let's say, whether it's at 60 or at 6 months old, we will respond or react to life based on our experience individually of that trauma. Trauma goes in. If it's not healed in that moment, it will go into a place in the back of our brain. We have the brain stem, so right in that area, a little place called the amygdala, and it'll sit there. And then everything that happens afterwards, we're going to react or respond to the new experience based on our past experience, which, if we've had trauma, is going to be trauma, or attachment, detachment, neglect, abuse. So it just goes in there. And so our whole formative years are built on reaction or response to our experiences in life. And everybody's degree of experiences differ. What happens when we get next to horses and we're working in relationship to horses is they're prey animals. And so they're always like, what's going on? They're not freaking out necessarily. They're just alert. But when you look at them, they don't seem alert. They're eating grass, or they're hanging out with their buddies, or they're doing horse business. But what horses do is they connect to each other in a herd. So we all have electromagnetic energy. So if you have 100 horses that are in a big herd, they have little sentries on different points, and a sentry will lift its head and go, "Oh, something's over there." And then all of a sudden, the whole herd lifts its head and goes, "What is it?" Nobody moves. They're just aware. Their little ears are going, and they're like poised. All their hearts are connected. So they respond in unison. And then the sentry goes, "Oh, it's nothing. It's a butterfly. Okay, we can go back and eat." So they go back and eat. And this is just this beautiful symphony of connection. So when you relate that to human beings, if you have individuals in a family unit, let's say, where one person is very dysregulated because of their life story, their generational trauma, that is going to spill out energetically, if not physically or emotionally, to everybody else in the family, right?
Yeah.
Or in the household. So it's just a lot of what we call dysregulation and trauma and generational trauma and historical trauma that just keeps rolling forward through life. And with horses, what we do with them is we pay attention to their natural instincts to be aware, but also be in a place of what we call coherence. So horses are naturally in a place of coherence. They don't know what fight, flight, faint, or freeze is like we do now, but they will be aware. It's not a butterfly. Let's get out of here. And the whole herd runs, right? As a way to protect themselves, because they're prey animals. They are preyed upon. So what we learn from horses is to be present, to respond, and if needed, react, right? What we normally do as human beings once we've had trauma is we react. There's no pause, respond, check it out. What is it? What do I need to do? It's an immediate reaction based on our past experience. So scientifically, there's all kinds of different levels of the brain that we go through. And sitting with horses during COVID, I was extremely calm. Everybody, the world's freaking out. And I'm very calm, and I'm like, I want this. I want every human being who's possibly gone through even something close to what I've gone through in my life to feel this. This is good. This is nice. I like this. I want to share this with everybody. How do I do it? So natural lifemanship is the training that we began with. We began training in their programs as our foundation. And because trauma is complex and very individual, I started searching out organizations that did equine assisted learning. So the attachment detachment disorder foundation is in the connection to relationship and rebuilding relationship, which also rebuilds our resilience. But I'm also of the belief systems are at the core of our unhappiness. And so if we have a belief that was ingrained in us that we don't like something or we like something, we're going to believe that because we're little. And it could be so much as a father or mother or sister, brother, school teacher, anybody who is an authority figure, or anybody that we look up to says, "You're not smart," right? You're not smart.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, I'm not smart because they said so. And somewhere that goes back into the amygdala, right into the little memory part of our brain. And we have either the opportunity, if we're in a healing environment, someone says, "That's not true. Let's take a look at that." And, because you get upset, "I'm not smart." Oftentimes it's overlooked or hidden or stuffed away. So we never get the opportunity to process it. So we started learning and got certified in equine assisted learning, which is where the facilitation comes in our work, where we work with the horses, with you, to get grounded, to get to a place where your mind starts to open up from brainstem to diencephalon to limbic into the neocortex, because most therapy goes neocortex back, and it could take a long time. With equine assisted services, it's where you're at right now. I'm not smart. I can't do anything. I'll never accomplish anything. I'm going to be like this forever. I don't have the intelligence to do anything wonderful in my life or make my dreams come true. That's a belief system that has been fortified for a long time. And when someone walks in and they step up next to a horse and we're just like, just brush the horse and let's see what happens. And the things that come up, like in the first 15 minutes, are pretty astounding. And usually it is a deep rooted belief system. I can't, I'm not good enough, I'm a bad person, I'm not smart, I'm unwanted, I'm unloved because I don't know. It's just that's what came up. Okay, then let's figure it out. So the horse will also be a participant in this process because as they're brushing the horse is giving us signals and we'll say, what do you notice about the horse? Well, it's ignoring me. And what makes you feel like the horse is ignoring you? So we go through a series of questions, right? And this is when these belief systems pop up. So from belief systems, which are trauma, they're traumatic events that happen that created a belief system within us. And we go into a bunch of different activities. And we kind of, the client comes in different every week, right?
Yeah.
Based on where they're at in their work that they're doing. And so they, they'll come up with something and we're like, okay, what would you prefer to believe? Well, then I'm really smart and I can do anything. I said, okay, well, let's go make that happen. And so there's a process of walking with the horse. The horse will sometimes stop. The horse is like, you don't believe this. And they don't. And they're like, I'm stuck. Okay, where you're stuck. And then the horse will sometimes have a tight mouth or the ears will go a certain way or the tail will flick. And I go, what are you feeling right now? I feel really irritated, like this is a lie. Okay, where's that coming from? And then the story starts to unfold and we're like, okay, this original pain, this original thought, let's just try to process that with your horse. And we always step back. It's really between the horse and the client. We just help facilitate their process. I believe that we know what's wrong. We know, we're not broken, just have to realign some things and figure some things out, keep some things and, but we know what the story is, whether we want to talk about it or not. Right.
Yeah.
So the horses are the partners. We help facilitate, but humans really know. When we walk into a doctor's office and I think a doctor said to me once, I said, well, this is how I feel. And it was, a physical thing. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yes, it is. This is my body.
My
I'm in
truth.
it. You're not. And it's the same
Right.
with mental health. We know somewhere in there, the brain is kind of like a bowl of spaghetti and it's all like in this bowl. And we have to be able to pull out the string and say, that's the first string, right? That's the one. I was told I was not smart when I was a kid. And a whole life can be challenged because of this belief system, and then depression can set in or anxiety can set in because someone was told that they couldn't because so
Okay. Wow.
There's a
Okay.
lot.
Well,
Sorry.
that was a lot. That was a lot. So just, I'm just kind of try to summarize a little bit what I heard. So it sounds like when you were alone with the horses during COVID, you really noticed the healing power and it drove you to want to create this experience for others, which essentially helped you take the steps to open the ranch. I guess I'm curious, horses are such great animals. They're large. Sometimes they feel very peaceful, but you've seen them, like, for example, like on, I don't know, Yellowstone or like some movies when they're like trying to tame these wild horses, sometimes they can be a little bit excitable, a little bit challenging. So what is it about the horses that you're working with that help others? And how do you ensure that the person gets a good experience? Is it just because you know your horses like really well?
Well, it's again, our job is to facilitate, to see, to watch, to our trainings. I mean, we've years of training and different modalities to understand knowing horses. I have 45 years with horses. I've learned to incorporate that into my training. For example, because you're talking about excitable horses. For example, yesterday afternoon, one of our facilitators was working with a woman who has a lot of grief, a lot of loss, and just really a lot of pain. And so on the way down, we go down to the place. The facilitator is talking to the client, catching up before we go into session. She goes into session and the client says, as they walk up to the area where her horse is, she says, I had this dream that there was an earthquake and that there was a horse running, and it was very chaotic. And as she walks up to the pen, her horse, who's just super sweet and loving and kind and wonderful and calm and beautiful, just starts running around and running around. And we were all a little bit like, wow, that's very different behavior for this horse, but let's take a look at it. So everything is, let's take a look at it. We have the facilitator, an equine professional, and the client and the horse. So there's a 4-part team. And so we decided not to step into the session, like into the arena with the horse. But what happened was the facilitator facilitated what's going on. What is the client bringing in that has the horse super dysregulated, right? The horse is like running around and not dangerous, but just running in circles super fast. And so they sat down outside the ring and they did some work. Heart math is one of the modalities that we use. So they did some heart focused breathing and a little bit of talking. And the horse, as the client started to come back into her body, the horse would stop where they were sitting, check in, and then go around, stop, check in. So the horse kept checking in to see how is this person doing, right? Is this person still dysregulated? We take each situation. Because this horse doesn't behave like that. But the client came in, I think it's their 3rd session. She came in with this session. She has a lot to unpack, and she carries it within her body and radiates it out, right? And so the horse is like, whoa, there's a disaster happening. So she's in fight or flight mode because the client has this incredible, and not all clients are like this, but this particular client brought in a whole lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, we read, our job is to read and to pose it back. The horse will walk away from the client consistently. The minute they step in, let's say the horse checks in, walks away. And the client's like, I'm not loved. The horse doesn't like me anymore. So what makes you think that? Well, because she doesn't want anything to do with me today. It's just like my life, right? So, okay, let's talk about what the possibilities are here for that. So let's try again. The horse just keeps walking away and walking away and walking away, but always looking back to see if the client's following. Are you coming? Come on. Because the client walks in super hyped up, tension, stress, and the horse is like, man, you need to calm down. Like, so we're gonna go on a walk. I'm not leaving you. I'm gonna check in on you, but I'm gonna make sure you're present when you're working with me. So the horse will walk 10 feet, look back, client catches up. And so finally both of them are in the same place and they can do their session. Every session is different. Every client's needs are different. It's our job to work with the horse. So if it's not good for the horse, if let's say like yesterday, we didn't want to put the client in with the horse. The horse was like, this client's energy is like, whoa. So we also pay very close attention to the needs of the horse, because if it's not good for the horse, it's not going to be good for the client. But every situation will present as, a horse is nudging at a client, what's going on, and the client's feeling a little weird. And I said, let's talk about boundaries. Yeah, I don't have any. I said, okay. What do you think the horse is trying to do right here? Well, she's just pushing me. I said, where else does that happen in your life? All the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like the horses, well, first of all, they're incredibly intuitive, like a lot of animals are, but it sounds like they are a incredible mirror to the client, so that what the horse's behavior allows you to read what's going on in the client's life. And through that process of reading that interaction, you can really get to the bottom of what the person's feeling. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Kind of.
Okay.
I would just say that not exactly a mirror, because the horse is a horse, right? It's not a human, it's a horse, but it picks up on my energy. I mean, my horses will tell me, hey, you need to go heart focus, right? You're bringing a lot of stuff into session. You need to go in and do a little self-regulation. And they will tell me in certain ways. So they pick up on my smell, my scent, my posture, and we work as a team. And so that the horse is not a mirror, because when the horse senses, let's see, if you come into a relationship passive, right? I'm afraid. What happens? People just slam you, push you out of the way, right?
Sure.
Okay, if you come into a relationship tough with boundary, like lots of protective mode, then, people are going to shy away. So we learn a lot with this behavior. If we come in with calm and assertiveness with a horse, when I'm training somebody new, I'm like, I'll go in, I'll be and they're like, how did you do that? The horse just like was there with you. They didn't submit, they didn't fight you. They just showed up and said, okay, let's work. How do you do that? And I said, it's connection. What a lot of us are not capable of due to many, 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 many reasons, trauma, but also just our societal relationship creation has been changed so much. It's very different. The foundation of connecting to one another is so skewed. We're social creatures, humans. We need to connect, right? And so are horses. That's the main reason we get along. But they have that extra sense, so they can smell if we're afraid. They can smell it for tense. They can feel a fly on their back, so they can sense whatever's going on. Pain. They show us with their teeth, with their eyes. They'll let us know, picking up on, not mirroring, but intuitively, as you said, picking up on our sensory stuff. And I swear to God, they're mind readers. But really, truly, it is about their ability, their intuitive ability, not to mirror us, but to actually pick up on what's going on with us. And that's why the team is really important. You have the client, you have the equine professional who works with the equine professional facilitator, and we're all picking up on different things and observing and encouraging the team to understand. Oftentimes clients will project, oh, this horse is just like my grandfather, right? So project onto that. So there's a couple of opportunities with that. I just did a training seminar thing that we listened to the other day, and I was like, yes, so incredible. We do it all the time. We meet people and we're like, oh, it's just like my ex-husband, or that's just like my, sister. We project onto people, and we do it with the horses in session. Is that an opportunity to learn, to change that belief system? Where does it come from? How do we approach relationships like that? How would we prefer it to be? Right. And it's not really about changing anybody, but it comes from working through our stuff. It always comes back to us, and everything is an opportunity for growth, right? Everything is, as you imagine, after the Maui wildfires, there was a lot of why. Why did this happen? And, you got to hold space for that, because it's a lot of pain and everything. And the reality is we don't know. And we're not going to know.
Yeah, I did want to ask you about that experience, but before we got to that, I was hoping you could share the story. You and I had a call before this, and you shared a beautiful story about a horse that interacted with somebody who was really afraid to be connected with somebody, and the horse was so gentle with her. Can you share that story?
Yes. Okay, so we work with a lot of youth, and youth that have been through some severe trauma. And in this case, a youth came into our program. We often don't get to know the details of why they're in a program, but we just go in and we're open. We're always open to where they're at that day. And in this case, no one knew the history of this young lady, and she chose a horse, which was surprising because he's a little snarky, and we call him the Joker. He likes to play and like kind of, he's my favorite horse. He's my favorite heart horse, but he could be a little challenging for clients, and I was surprised. But she came off as very hard and shut off and distrusting and didn't believe in anything. And so we went to work with him, and we started working with, we always start our clients with heart focused breathing and coherence practice prior to working with the horses, because that kind of helps ground them a little bit before they get into working with the horse, so they can be a little clearer about what's going on while they're working with the horse. It's fabulous intro. So this horse just was incredible. The first session, he worked on just relationship, and he just laid down at her feet. And I'm
Wow.
like, I've never seen him do anything like this. He's so snarky. What is happening here? And, she just had been betrayed and lied to. She had been sexually abused multiple times in her life and had never told anyone, but was able to tell us after that about the abuse. It's a incredible story because she just stood there. She was walking around him, and he just went up to her and laid down right at her feet. She's standing there right at her feet. And he just laid there, and I'm like, what is happening? I mean, I've seen horses do this, and he was just at peace, and who knows what was going through his mind, but he energetically felt he needed to be a safe place for her, right? He needed to let her know that he wasn't going to hurt her or take anything from her. And he did that for a couple of sessions. And this girl just transformed. Like she's like, what do I do? I said, what do you think he's trying to tell you? And she said, I don't know. I said, so in life, especially with these experiences, people have groomed you and prepared you and then taken something from you and then threatened you. So what was Shadow's just laying down in a very vulnerable position at your feet? What do you think he's trying to convey? Yeah. And she said, trust. And I said, that's up to the two of you. You guys decide. So he did it the next session, and they just have built this beautiful relationship. She's got a long journey, but she was open, and she started smiling, and she started having just this different outlook. She's bringing her younger brother in, which is exciting, to the program. Wow. So yeah, and she was able to talk about something she's kept inside her entire life. So that it was amazing. They just know. The horses just know. They're like, I know what this kid. And sometimes it's challenge. Sometimes they'll be, like I said, I'll have a child that needs to learn boundaries because they're a pushover, right? They always say yes. Yeah. And so a horse will be like pushing with their nose, and they're like, stop, stop. And I'm like, okay, this is good. What do you mean it's good? And I said, well, you talk about how everybody takes advantage of you. How about we learn some having boundaries and setting boundaries, two different things, right? We can have a boundary can get crossed. We can have a boundary and it can still be crossed. And we can reinstate having our boundaries. And if it's not listened to, we can set a boundary and say, that's it, we're done. So how we teach, I love teaching boundaries. I learned boundaries at 50. I was like, why? Just say no? Wow.
You could do that.
And horses really teach you that, like personal space and boundaries, and like, no. Right. We had a big bunch of therapists at an indigenous program that we went to learn some techniques. And the woman said, therapists, we don't know how to say no. Does anybody here know how to say no? And I'm like, I do. Because I could say stop to a horse, right? Stop. And it'll stop,
Yeah.
So
and they listen.
I love boundaries. They're amazing.
Wow. Well, it's so incredible to hear about the work that you're doing, and then the horses. You just make me want to take a trip out there so badly. Yes. to visit. And I know you're on the ranch right now, which is why we may hear some background noises, but I'd be remiss if I didn't just touch upon the fires and what happened in Maui a few years ago. Can you talk about that experience, what it was like being there? I know how devastating they were. Can you share how they affected you and the ranch, and what the aftermath has been that you're seeing now? Gosh,
that's a lot. It's still very sensitive. Like it's still really sensitive for, I think, everyone here. I surfed Lahaina. I lived in Lahaina, worked in Lahaina when I was young. I came out to Maui when I was very young, and, a lot of wonderful memories there. And I love my community. And so, we have a business. We have a for-profit tourist business ourselves. So the trail rides, and we have a hamburger restaurant that we cater to the tourists, right, from our cattle. And we were shut down. Like COVID, we lost everything.
Yeah.
So We lost 100% of our income. Everything that we had booked out from August to December was canceled. So we lost all of our savings because we
Oh
had to refund everything
my God.
the following
Oh,
year. And continuing, we still struggle. Like, so tourism is really struggling. So we
mm,
lost, if I could say quantitative figures, 60% of our income was lost in the year after the fire. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
oh my
Like, oh my
gosh.
God. But, we're resilient. And,
You are.
when the fires happened, it was a lot like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Like phone calls, refunds, people were screaming at us. And at some point, I
Oh,
just had to send out a mass email and say, listen, we just lost our most precious part of our island. And I simply can't talk to anyone at the moment. But what we did do is we opened the Spirit Horse Ranch to everyone because I knew my safe place was with the horses. And
yeah.
for trauma, that's our training. We pulled our boots up and said, we didn't have funding, we didn't have anything. And I just sent out a post to this site that's a news site. They blasted it, and we have been nonstop ever since because there is a
Mm,
grounding effect. And the first 6 months was really just rapid trauma response, like people were in shock. And as a team, we did our work. We were in, that mode of that people get into, which is let's do this. And with faith, funding came in because we were pretty small. We were working with youth and very different schedule, like different hours. And then
yeah.
when the fires happened, it was 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And then we kindly stopped the sessions at 6 days a week because it was a lot. Horses were
Hmm.
getting tired.
Yeah.
So we do 4 days. We do about 30 clients a week, 40 clients a week. It just depends on how many, between two and sometimes three facilitators. It's still a lot for the horses, but as a family, we lost everything. Yeah, boom,
Mm.
gone. And I
Oh my
laugh because I'm like, geez, but it all
Yeah.
works out. You know what I mean? It all does. We
Mhm.
still haven't got that great upswing that, everybody had hoped for, that people would come back to Maui. It's still kind of tough. Tourists are just choosing to go other places, which on top of everything else, and I say this a lot to funders, I said, yes, everyone in Lahaina suffered great losses, loss of life, loss of homes, loss of businesses, and just so much, right? But outside of Lahaina, there was a lot of loss and a lot of decisions that were made with different organizations that put people out of their homes to put
Mm.
in fire survivors, which, it was chaotic. It was
Yeah.
just so many
Wow.
people without a home. So, we don't just work with fire survivors who are in the immediate area, we work with everyone. So, when you have a magnitude of a disaster like that, anytime there's a fire on Maui, people who are unhealed, the post traumatic stress, and if they've got prior, because when a disaster happens, what comes up? Current event, previous trauma comes to the surface, and it's like,
Right.
wow, right? And so
Right.
a lot of people are like, I can handle it, I can handle it. We're still seeing fire survivors come in who
Yeah.
have not sought any type of therapy at all.
Wow.
We're almost at 2 years, right? And so there's a lot of
Wow.
people who have not had any healing because they're tough, right? I got this.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
they try to muscle through it.
yeah,
Right.
but
Mhm.
even us, like our team, I'm like, okay, do you check in with your support team? I do brain spotting. Like I'll get overload. I'm like, okay. Well, the horses are now saying, dude, you need to go cleanse. They let me know. Like they'll come in and put their
Yeah.
head on my thing. They're like, you need to zen. And they'll
Mm.
do clearings on me in a session. I'm like, stop it. They're like, nope, you need some healing.
Well, I know that our time is starting to run short, but I have to say, we talked about the fires. We talked about the work that you're doing on the ranch. I mean, this is a time where we really want to call for people to consider making a donation. Can you
Ooh.
talk about how those donations truly help the work that you're doing?
Especially at a time like this when there's so much uncertainty with federal government funding, state and county, we really do rely on foundation and individual donations to keep us going. We're just, yeah. We
Yeah.
have a lot of foundation funding. We have federal grant funding for what we do, but let's say we need to bring in new transportation, which is something that we're doing to add to our transportation, or to just, there's so much, there's feed, there's vet bills,
Yeah.
constant. We don't just have, 8 employees, we have 15 employees that are often getting into shenanigans, but horses are expensive. Feed in Hawaii is incredibly expensive.
I can
And if
imagine.
there's horse people
Mhm.
out there, we are 3 times the cost for feed and hay and supplies. Everything has to be shipped here. Our vet bills are outrageous. If you could see what happens, like everything is so much more expensive than on the continental United States. So we really depend on to sustain, to keep going. I mean, we're like
Mhm.
most nonprofits right now, we're like, what's going to happen next year? And
Yeah.
so, we don't get into fear. We just plug ahead and continue writing grants. I met with my grant consultant this morning. I'm like, what are we going to do? She's like, let's get a plan. And I'm actually writing a bill for the legislature because the state and county have not added us as a line item. And I'm like, after 3 years, almost 4 years, you still are not acknowledging on a financial level. We did get a county mental health grant, which was awesome, which was, a foot in the door, but they're so closed-minded to things that work.
Yeah. Wow.
It's that holistic, somatic healing, that they're starting to realize works. It's almost the way that they have now created the different tests that you can do to find out what kind of mental health prescriptions are right for you as an individual,
Hmm.
right? And I think that mental health in general needs to be supported. And we appreciate any donations that come in because it will go to use. It goes to
Yeah. Very much
it
so.
goes to good use. There's just the feed costs alone are out. So we'll do
Yeah.
it. We do appreciate it. Every donation that comes in is just, we put it really to make sure
Yeah.
that everything is taken care of here. So we appreciate them very much.
Well, just a reminder to everybody listening or watching on YouTube that we will put the link to where to donate below in the show notes. Make sure that everybody can find it. But before I let you go, Paige, I have to ask you questions that I ask all my guests.
Okay.
All right. So, reflecting on our conversation today, what is one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember about consciousness and the work that you're doing?
I truly believe that we have our intuition and that we know, and to follow that intuition. If you need help, to ask for help. It's the most amazing thing that you can do to take care of your well-being, find what works for you as an individual. So being conscious and about our mental health is very important because we're our own vessel, and this vessel needs to be cared for.
Okay, thank you. And if someone is just starting their journey towards a deeper understanding to all of this, to consciousness, what advice would you give them?
Okay, I'm a fan of heart math, so I really love heart
Mhm.
focused breathing. It was a game changer for me. I kind of poo-pawed
Yeah.
it, but I definitely believe in heart focused coherence as a beginning to get back in your body because it creates clarity of thought, better sleep. I just, when the mind is going like this, because I'm super hyper, it just goes,
Mhm.
woo, okay, I'm ready for the day.
Yes.
I'm clear, and I heart focus all day long. So I'd have to say that, heart math changed my life, changed my practice. And that was a combination of being around the horses who are in coherence, training in the heart focused areas with all of my trainings, and then training in heart math. But yeah, getting back in your body and um, learning to reset your nervous system is
Mhm.
incredible. So I would say start
Mhm.
there. Then you can think, what do I want to
Yeah.
do? What do I want to do next? Yeah, all of our clients
Yeah.
who work at who actively practice heart math, their level of healing is just incredible. So I'd have to say that's an incredible tool.
That's amazing. Shout out to Heart Math. You and I
Yeah.
are Heart Math sisters. We both have been certified in Heart Math
Yeah.
resilience training, which is amazing. So, so thank you for that shout out. Last question for you. In your opinion, what does it mean to live life consciously?
Gosh, it's a big question.
No.
Living life consciously is, back to being aware, and all the things, can be so distracting in life. Self-care is super important, whether you're uh, trying to navigate your way or you're working in the healing field. It's very important to take care of self and make sure that you're attuned to what your needs are, and take that time for yourself every day, to just connect to some peace. It's a game changer, to just take a few moments and acknowledge how you feel. If I don't feel great today, why is that? What can I do? Can I shift? Is this real? Is it important? What do I want today? So just kind of having those conversations about, am I conscious of me before I enter into the world? And yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer. Very, very well put. Paige, thank you so much for sharing about your story, about your work, your beautiful insight into how horses heal. Thank you so much for being here. I
Well,
appreciate
thank
your
you.
time and you
I'm gonna
very, very
go
much.
do a session right now.
Well, before you go, reminder that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I invite you to consider the power of community, supported healing, and the Spirit Horse Ranch is a sanctuary for so many, and your contribution, no matter the size, really helps ensure that this work continues to reach those who need it most, especially in the wake of Maui's recent devastation. So, to support Paige's mission, head to the show notes. As a
Thank
reminder, visit
you.
thespirithorseranch.org. Make a donation, please. Your generosity is a big part of the healing ripple. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious, and keep seeking clarity. Much love. Bye for now.